You're watching Morning at NTV, and the conversation we're about to have comes at the backbone of 10th October. This year in particular, we were looking at World Mental Health Awareness Day, and therefore we want to see the address to mental health in Uganda and the well-being of our young people. COVID-19 brought out so many realities and the broken systems that we have in our country, especially stemming down to the family unit as well as the community unit and then governance unit. But away from that, mental illness in particular, it's a concern for younger people right now. The World Health Organization has estimated that around 20% of the world's children and adolescents have a mental health condition, a rate that is almost double compared to the general population. The transition from childhood to adulthood, we all know how difficult that is, and of course in later years leading to the development of greater independence, and with it increased exposure to risky behaviors. We're talking about drug abuse, substance abuse, and so many other things. In the course of all this, young people go through internal changes and develop their own sense of identity and views about themselves and the world around them. They may feel a conflict between their growing sense of identity and what is expected of them from society. It is no wonder that in such a time as this, you do have mental health that is associated with the different risks that teenagers are going through right now. Lona Nakabuye, who is a mental health practitioner, is here to help me decipher this conversation. But I don't know where to start from, but good morning to you, Lona.
Morning.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
I have a story here that we were looking at earlier with Chris that was mind-bubbling. Activists want teenage mothers back to school after 4 months.
That is very ridiculous, to say the least. I think it's very unfair to think that a child who had just, a teenager, we're looking at 12, 13, 14-year-old going back to school after they've just literally birthed a child. Even with adults, if you have 2, 3, 4 kids, 3 months of maternity leave is not enough. You're going through physical changes, you're going through emotional changes, you're trying to adjust, to being a mother. So I can only imagine a 11, 12, 13-year-old trying to go through these physical changes of their body, like changing and healing from, having birthed a child.
And the healing differs because some may be natural births, some may be cesarean births.
Exactly. So that's a whole different aspect of things. So expecting that within 4 months of having a child, and now you're just scooped up and taken back to school. Now you have to adjust to being a student again. There's going to be a lot of maybe bullying because they're now looking at you like, oh, you just birthed a child, or there's something wrong with you.
Your breasts are bigger because the milk is now here for the child. Exactly. Then you'll have some dripping drops on your blouse in school.
Yes, so that's going to be very, cause a lot of issues, body image issues for the teenager. So that's why I say it's very unfair. And to think that even emotionally, there's a drop in hormones and all that stuff that comes with emotional balance and imbalance. So while you're still healing physically, you're also trying to adjust to the new normal. So it's very unfair to think that now you're going to just switch and go back to school and be a student and be able to concentrate in class and do homework and be on time for everything. That's just impossible.
It's just impossible. Yeah. If it's difficult enough for an able mother who's of age, how much more difficult it is for a teenager. Of course, for them, the point is that the education should still continue for this child. However, then the backbone of that in argument is that there's need to sensitize the schools, sensitize the pupils, because again, it comes with a lot of stigma, which then relates to the mental health of this teenage mother. Now, focusing on young people, I want you to first give us an understanding. What are the current mental health disorders or challenges that young people are facing, especially in Uganda?
The biggest one is depression, different forms of depression. And this has been something that was already there pre-COVID. But now with COVID and post-COVID, it just exposed something that was already there. It even just put it in everyone's face, and it just intensified everything. Being forced to, you know, go from school, go home for, you know, how old? 2 years almost. So people were taken away, children were taken away from their routine. So then they now have to adjust to being at home and being within families that maybe were unstable, and maybe because they were at school, they weren't able to see this. But now being at home, they're able to like really see how unstable their families are. And they're carrying this instability now that they have to go back to school. Another thing is if they're being bullied, you know, now they have to, you know, have to go back to school, maybe like a toxic school environment that is causing, you know, depression, anxiety. So depression and anxiety are very big in, you know, young people, especially now that there's, you know, social media. We see a lot of things on social media, and if you can't afford a certain lifestyle, or you see your friends doing some things that you are not able to do, you can get like very depressed, or, you know, bullying at school causing a lot of anxiety. Another thing is post-traumatic stress. So if a child was, you know, abused at home, let's say physical abuse or emotional abuse or neglect, any type of trauma, they carry this trauma with them as they get older. So this is some type, like, you know, they're having the aftermath of this trauma carrying to school, and it's, you know, making them fail to concentrate in class, making it hard for them to make friends or maintain friendships and stuff like that. So those are the biggest three. Some of the others are more, they kind of manifest like older adults, I mean young adults, for like, you know, like psychotic disorders, you know, like schizophrenia.
But all simply because they've not been addressed at the opportune time as children. Okay, all right. But of course, statistically, you're looking at 1 out of 5 children facing mental health challenges globally. Now, I know that there's some that are behavior related. I know that there's some that are emotionally attached. There's some that are actually just mental health. So for us as Uganda and even Africa as a whole, which are those particular ones that are in line with behavior, or in line with emotional and then mental?
So most of the mental illnesses do affect behavior. So example, you know, depression or anxiety. If you're depressed, you are going to, you know, be sad most of the time, crying, withdrawing from friends and family, you know, withdrawing from activities that you used to enjoy, having a hard time, you know, just socializing with people or concentrating in class or at work. With anxiety, you're going to find yourself constantly worrying that you can't, you know, stop the worry, or you're finding yourself withdrawing from activities because you're so anxious, like you just can't even stand in a room where like there's a lot of people. So it is going to affect your behavior because you're going to be withdrawn. And some people, especially with children, because they're so confused about what's going on in their bodies, if they're anxious, if they're getting panic attacks, they're going to be so confused because they don't know what's going on. So they might even act out. So it could be like anger outbursts. You're finding the child, you know, bullying other children at school because they're so angry they need to take it out on someone else. Or if they're withdrawing, so they're like someone who's like really active and now is kind of withdrawn, you know, keeping to their room, not wanting to talk, or if they're having some struggles with like body image stuff, you're going to find them again also withdrawn, maybe wearing more clothes or less clothes.
Yeah, I remember that time as a teenager. I was a bit bigger than I am today. And it was sort of body appreciating, I guess, for people. But for me, it caused me to hide my body. So I started wearing extremely long skirts, like to the ground. If it's not kissing the ground, I'm not wearing it. I'm not leaving this house. So I definitely understand, because people would always say, big legs, what? But for me, the way it affected me mentally was to the negative. So I was ashamed of my big legs.
Yeah, this is something that happens, you know, with the transition from childhood to adulthood. Your body's changing, you know, so you're physically changing, your emotions and social aspect of things, like you're trying to get to know who you are. So with this comes a lot of conflict. And people might look at you, let's say, you know, in school, when we're in school, there's people that were, you know, growing faster than the rest of us, or people are growing slower than the rest of, you know, their classmates. So both sides of the coin had some bullying to them. So this makes them very like self-conscious. So with that comes with a behavior of like, it could be anger, it could be, you know, withdrawal, leading to some depression, or anxiety, just like, you know, I don't want to go to school because I know what people are going to say about me. So that is going to affect their behavior. It's going to affect them, you know, education-wise as well. Yeah.
Okay, all right. The statistics are alarming. Let's talk about the prevalency of depression, especially in Uganda, because if you're looking at a population in Uganda, which is largely young people, up to 70%, and of that 70%, you're having 57% of them being below 15 years of age, then we're likely to have a lot of young people that are suffering from mental health-related challenges.
Yeah, and remember a few months ago when New Vision brought out the statistics of 14 million people are suffering from some type of mental illness, people were taking it as, ha ha ha, it's a joke, or some people took it actually seriously. But it is alarming, definitely. And again, like I said, with post-COVID, these were issues that were already existing before. And then with COVID, it just kind of like brought everything out in the open. So we're definitely, probably even at, you know, as of 2017, the World Health Organization, you know, reported there was about like 5% of individuals in Uganda are suffering from depression and about 3% from anxiety. This is 2017. So right now, 2022, definitely higher.
Yeah.
And we're also looking at, we don't have exact statistics because most people are self-medicating. By self-medicating, I'm thinking they're drinking, they're smoking, they're using very ineffective coping mechanisms, so they're not even going to, you know, to do like a checkup, like have an assessment and go to like a therapist or, you know, Butabika, or like a psychiatric hospital or something. So this is just the number of people that are in there as of 2017. Right now it's definitely higher, one, and then also there's so many other people that are not actually diagnosed. So it's a lot more alarming.
Well, you have talked about diagnosis. There's a series that I love very much, and one of the things that I found very interesting, if especially casualties have come into the emergency room, before release they must go through a psychiatric assessment before release, just to check their mental state. Is it compatible with them saying that they are okay, given the traumatic experiences that they have had? Which then begs the question, in terms of addressing treatment for us in Uganda, if the largest number will not even acknowledge it, they will slap it in your face. I know, just go and like there's just some machoism that is slapped to this whole mental health challenge here.
Yeah.
So when it comes to treatment, I've had very few facilities that actually consider these treatments for these children. And then again, there's the uneven distribution of these treatment facilities that can diagnose some of these challenges for the young people especially.
Yeah.
They're more to the rich people's kids can have those services extended to them. But you do have those that are not privileged. You do have the poor who are below the poverty line, and yet they're also facing the same issues. So in terms of diagnostics and in terms of addressing these issues in a more professional manner or in a more medical manner, where do we stand?
We still have a lot of work to do, to say the least. Like you said, not many facilities are providing mental health check-ins for, you know, people that have just, let's use the example of like just had a major accident. You know, we're not checking for any post-traumatic stress or even doing like reviews, you know, let's say a month or two down the road. We're not doing that, at least to, you know, what we would like. Also, not very many hospitals are doing check-ins for mothers that have just had babies, so yet there's a lot of postpartum depression, and we're not doing that yet. We're not doing enough, especially in schools, to have like psychologists or counselors, therapists come in and, you know, talk to the children. Even insurance companies are not paying for mental health. services. They will take care of like the physical aspect of things, but for mental health, a lot of people also look at it like, that's a rich people's problem. You know, like, oh,
and
you'll
if it's
be
for the
fine.
poor, then you're bewitched. That's how they interpret it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet this is not a rich people's problem. Even like the person that is way below the poverty line is experiencing some sort of depression, some sort of anxiety, some sort of a psychotic disorder. So they too need the help. They too need the services. So the biggest thing that we can do is, one, create awareness. Two, encourage at least each facility, like medical facility, to have a wing for like mental health, where like it's compulsory for like new mothers to do like a check-in. See how you take your child for, you know, their 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
immunization.
Whatever. Exactly.
Yeah.
That should be the same as for mothers, even in like the very, like the lowest, you know, the rural areas. Have like regular check-ins where they like, how are you doing as a mother? What's going on? You know, even like people that are just coming from accidents, you know, how are you doing? How are the
even
children doing?
in just a mere workplace, actually.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Because some people might not have time to do that, go to check-ins because they're at work. Have regular things where, like, you know, companies bring in people, they do like, you know, retreats where like, hey, let's talk about mental health, let's talk about stress and how to deal with stress and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, focusing on young people, of course, there's a transition element that could bring about these different mental-related issues and challenges. There's also the identity, the thing of identity, them trying to find their identity versus the different identities that are being slapped to them that are perceived as good. How do you address such issues? And I want you to address it in terms of what we have as available resources, a family unit, a community, maybe leaders. How can those different groups of people enable this young person to transition and also find their identity in a manner that is holistic?
That's a big question. I said big because it has an aspect of the cultural expectations, you know, gender roles, social expectations. So if you've noticed, like, you know, the things that our parents went through, the challenges they went through, the things that they were exposed to are not the things that we're exposed to. You know, even people that are younger than us, they're not the things that they're exposed to.
Yep.
Yeah, they have way more exposure to social media and the global world, which we didn't have growing up. So that's one aspect of things. We need to remember that the times have changed. So with the times changing, we need to be flexible with what has come with the times. So the one thing I would say for like church communities, parents, schools, to understand that there's an age gap, and you know, when someone is exposed, like right now, like a teenager, the challenges that they're going through are probably not the same things that I'm going through. So we need to understand there's that age gap. So with that understanding comes empathy and compassion, and we're able to see them at the level where they're at, and encourage them to talk to people or bring in people that might be able to relate to them on their level. So it comes with like identity as well. You know, they're trying to identify themselves in a community or like a country that is somewhat not as progressed as, let's say, the Western world, of which that the things that they're seeing are from the Western world. So then there's like that huge conflict. So again, we need to it calls really for majorly understanding that there's a difference, and we have to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the fact that there's significant gaps in funding and availability of mental health facilities that can take or address such issues, especially focusing on child and adolescents. Now, away from that, let's look at some of the approaches that are available just to mitigate the medical, the socio-economic effects of mental health related issues and disorders, leveraging on the power of digital health technology. How are you using this to actually be able to deploy assistive, preventative, as well as therapeutic solutions that people need?
That's the power of social media right now. There's a ton of information that's been spread out, especially with awareness. You know, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, TV, there's so much that is out there right now that, you know, teenagers and, you know, young adults are getting. So that's one big thing. We're getting so much information. People are getting to know what's going on and, you know, have some things to look out for. So that's one thing. The other thing that came with the lockdown also is being able to access mental health services online. So like Zoom, even if you don't have to like physically meet the client, you're able to, you know, talk to them on Zoom or on the phone, WhatsApp, video call, you know, which wasn't there before. There's also like, you know, like free mental health services where people can, you know, call in or, you know, talk to like a licensed professional and get the help they need from, you know, even if they're like miles and miles away. So that has been very helpful in the field. So hopefully we can keep on doing that.
There's a big question on how effective that is, because let me tell you, there's a power of scrolling, just scrolling. If it's not relevant or I'm hiding from it, I will definitely scroll past it. So how is it impactful in such a time as this?
Yeah, you never know how impactful it is or not.
Assessment is, yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, I could, you know, just keep scrolling. So it's very likely that I'm going to miss out on information that might be very helpful because you just want the fun things. It's just like, oh, someone is talking about mental health. I don't have to worry about that. Let me just keep scrolling through TikTok at this, you know, dance competitions or stuff like that. So that is a downside, definitely. And really, we have no way of making people watch, because you can only produce what you can produce and hope that it touches the people that are, you know, in need of the help.
Okay,
in need of the
that calls for a lot of creativity.
Yes.
Now back to the young person. From your experience and your expertise, how can a young person actually shape and accept a positive identity?
Well, I would say just trying to understand who they are and sticking to their truth. You know, I always keep telling people, you know yourself best. You know what you need. You know what is helpful for you. So helping them shape a positive outlook of themselves is trying to get a community that is in support of the values that you hold for yourself. Trying to, like a church community or school, friends. Trying to get with people that support the positive values that you have of yourself, and trying to create boundaries for yourself, knowing that, you know, there's going to be people that are against what you believe in, but if you have set the boundary that, you know, I can coexist with these people, that is going to be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I have a question here from Marilyn, and she's saying, how do you treat social media addiction for children?
For children, definitely putting boundaries. So making sure like there's a time. You know, like I said, when we were growing up, we didn't have that much social media exposure. We didn't have like smartphones, you know. So if your child has a smartphone, you can put a time limit to, hey, you can only use your phone from this time to this time, or you can watch TV from this time to this time. That way they know that there's going to be a stop. It's not like all day watching TV, all day on your phone. And it might take like actually removing the phone from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Entitlement. You're going to see tug of war. Lorna, in your closing remarks.
Yeah. The one thing I was reading about this week, which is Mental Health Awareness Day on Monday, it was calling for people to make mental health a global priority, which I think that people need to start with themselves. Pay attention to yourself. You know yourself best. So if you feel like you're feeling any different, feeling withdrawn, constant worrying, or you know you're feeling like burnt out, getting easily irritated, which usually you're not before, pay attention to it. Seek out help. You know, I like to tell people a lot. You know, it's okay to not be okay. So if you're feeling any type of way, seek out the help. And there's definitely many services out there. I know maybe sometimes it's hard to access them.
Affordability
Is a huge thing too.
Your services are very expensive for general Uganda, and they don't have a timeline. It's not like malaria where, you know, 2 times 3, 5 days a dose, it's done. Your services are continuous services until there's some registered progressive improvement of the patient. So it's in terms of affordability, it's still wanting.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But with awareness, people are going to come to appreciate the services.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lorna, for having this conversation with us, focusing on young people. Why? Because young people are the future. So if their identity is distorted at a young age, then we're going to be having a distorted country at a later age. Now, just to give you objectives and what we would desire out of this whole conversation, if it can be increased in terms of knowledge, understanding, and involvement, especially of policy makers, service providers, families, communities, faith leaders, and all stakeholders that can come through to ensure regular promotion of mental health and prevention of some of these mental challenges. It goes a long way in actually mitigating these issues. Let's talk about building capacity, improving access as well as availability of comprehensive care and treatment of mental health related issues will go a long way in ensuring that each one of us, especially our young people, is fine. There's research that is needed to support what we're talking about because while you do have little research that is, you know, done to people who are able, there's people who are unable, the less privileged, but they face the same issues. And so research can give us monitoring and evaluation at a better spectrum, not just for a wholesome population, but a broken down research to cover children, adolescents, young adults, and so on and so forth. And then development and review of policies and legislators. We call upon your help to ensure that at least there can be a policy in terms of the emergency room, just the emergency room. Where people who got COVID-19, recommended by World Health Organization, was that post-COVID-19 treatment, they must have treatment. They must have psychological treatment of some sorts. They must be followed up. How are they doing? How are they adjusting to being resettled back into society? Are we seeing that as a reality for those that went through that COVID challenge in Uganda? I don't think so, but it comes down to the policymakers, legislators giving us a helping hand to make this a better country in terms of mental health. Well, that brings us to the end of our Kickstarter. We take a short breather. We return shortly.